It's another brilliant episode in the She Can series. We're talking to women of all walks of life about their journey, how they got to where they are today. And today I have a super pleasure in talking to Emma Boynton. Emma, tell us a little bit more about yourself and what you do.
Oh, it's so lovely to be here. I run the Sellout live event series and media platform called Sex Talks, which exists to engender more honest and open conversations around typically taboo topics. So I started Sex Talks because I did sex therapy in lockdown when it was a kind of pretty intense time, I think, for anyone who's dealing with any sort of mental health issue. I think it was stuff that really came to the fore. And I had just never really felt like I had a very good relationship to sex. I really struggled with orgasming. And I was at a point where I kind of didn't really care about that. But went to a dinner party with some friends, actually they weren't even my friends, they were people I didn't even know. And we were somehow talking about this. And I said, yeah, I'm not a sexual person. I don't really enjoy it that much. I've not had great experiences. And one of the girls at the table just looked at me and was like, you can fix this. You can do sex therapy. Anyway, long story short, I did end up taking advice and I did sex therapy, and I found the experience completely transformative in that it didn't just show me first and foremost, it showed me how fundamental your relationship to sex is to your relationship to yourself more broadly. But second of all, it really changed how I saw my body and my sense of self and my confidence in turn. And I figured that if the lessons I had in the sex therapy room could prove as transformative for me, they could prove just as transformative for other people. So I set up Sex Talks really to basically allow other people, in the hopes that I could help other people to have access to sort of conversations and insights I'd had in the sex therapy room, and beyond, in the hope that they'd be as impactful for others as they were for myself.
And they are really transformative. Emma, I've only been to one of your events, but I've been on your platform since then. I've subscribed to your Substack and so on. And it's really incredible work holding the space for everyone and opening up the space around conversations that we have never had beforehand. And to be feeling it in your body and to be okay with that. And so, Emma, I'm wondering, what is your main motivator? How do you overcome this fear that, to talk about things that isn't mainstream?
It's a great question. And I think I really do place a lot of credit of my sex therapist, because I think I went into sex therapy saying I'm broken, like there's something wrong with me. I really internalized a lot of the issues I had around sex, and I thought that they were my own fault and they were to do with me being the bad, like I'd done something wrong, I was bad, I was wrong, whatever. And it was such a unique experience in that I was sitting, each week I would speak to someone who I would tell very vulnerable things to about my relationship to my body, my relationship to sex. And there was no shame, and there was no sense that I was being judged, or instead she's like, this is really normal. And it was the first time that I was like, oh, maybe I'm not broken, maybe this is actually like a much more common experience for people to have and I'd been aware of. And I think that's really such an important point to make there, is that I think we have so our sex culture is fundamentally broken. We have poor sex education, we don't talk about it properly, we have such a male-centric view of sex and pleasure that has been historically pumped out in cultural, like lots of popular culture and pornography and beyond. And I think the lack of the nuanced, vulnerable, open conversations around sex means that a lot of the times we're just left to feel very alone in whatever our experience around sex is. So for someone like me with sexual dysfunction, which by the way affects upwards of 50% of women at some point in their lives, you're left to feel that it is something that with you're the problem, rather than it being a system-wide issue and kind of structural issue. And so having the opportunity to speak to someone in a non-judgmental, shame-free context really helped me build my confidence and build my confidence in my sense of self, and help me kind of first of all recalibrate my relationship to sex, really importantly to recalibrate my relationship to my body, which had been so bad after years and years and years of struggling with an eating disorder. And I think it helped kind of give me, the language and the confidence to talk about sex and talk about my body and talk about my relationship to both those things in a much more, I guess, in a kind of bolder, more self-assured way. And I think, and I came out, I was like writing in a column about my experience in sex therapy at the time. And so I was translating a lot of what I was learning in the sex therapy room to the page. And as a writer, that really helped me process my emotions, my thoughts. And I was just shocked at the number of women, particularly, who got in touch when some of the pieces went out and said, this is something I've experienced. I too had an eating disorder and had issues with sexual dysfunction. I too have been sexually assaulted and had this issue. And I think it just made me realize that there's so many people who were going through something very similar / something worse than I was. And then I guess after that, it just became easier and easier to talk about openly. And more people revealed to me that they'd had something similar. And I just realized that it was something that was so widespread. And I also should probably add to this, I do love talking, and I do love talking about taboo topics. I do get some sort of kick probably about opening up a conversation that most people might recoil from. There's something there. I think I have quite a kind of performative family, and maybe there's something in being able to kind of feel like you can kind of hold court a bit when usually people would shy away from the topic. So, but I really do think it was that building of confidence that was so key to what's kind of allowed me to speak about sex with the depth and breadth and nuance that I feel able to now.
Emma, and you've just alluded to it. You're obviously a brilliant speaker. You make it really fun. So you break down all these barriers that you have with the people you talk to, but also to your audience. And I really felt that at that event, and that's also very palpable on your platform. I'm wondering, what else do you feel you sort of bring to the table that you offer, as that's one of your qualities that makes you so good at what you do now? You really represent something so important, and you get the feedback for that. What do you think is it that you have that makes you so good at that?
Oh, that's such a nice thing to hear. I really appreciate that. So thank you. I think I have an insatiable curiosity, and I come from a family of journalists, and I really love asking questions. And I think I really am driven by curiosity and never by judgment never by judgment, always by curiosity. And I think instinctively, I want to ask why. And I think particularly around a topic like this, it's really helpful. So I think a lot of the conversations we have at Sex Talks are really questioning the baked-in assumptions around how things should be. And anytime I come across any sort of assumption as to the role a woman should have in a relationship, the assumption that a woman should take a man's last name, the assumption that men's sexual pleasure should be prioritized of women. Anytime I confront any sort of assumption, I am always like, but why? But why? But why? And so I think that insatiable curiosity really helps me to come at these topics with a really open mind and also a genuine desire to really expand my understanding and insight into the topic. And I think in so doing, bringing along the audience, the readers, etc., whoever I'm speaking to at that time with me. And I think that's obviously a kind of a really key journalistic trait generally, is to be really curious and to continue to ask that question of why, because often that does get you to a really interesting story and a really kind of interesting new idea. So I think and I also, to add on to that, I read voraciously and consume information, and I think I really love being able to repackage that information and and share it with others. So I think it's probably those twin things that help me.
Which you do so well, Emma. And I think one needs to blow all of that wide open, because really, I think even in this day and age, and I can see that with all the teenage friends of my children, I sort of think that porn has really taught them that this is the way it goes. And they never ever think about female pleasure in a way that they need to. So there's a huge amount of re-education that needs to take place. So, you're amazing, Emma. What are you most proud of to date on your journey?
Oh, that is a great question. What am I most proud of? Oh, God, I've never really thought about that. And you know what? It's interesting. As you asked that, it's quite confronting, because I think I'm always so obsessed with the next thing, and I think that probably comes from a place of intellectual insecurity sometimes, and thinking I'm really ambitious, but also I always feel I'm not doing enough, I need to be doing more, I need to be moving on to the next project. So I actually really don't often sit back and reflect on anything. I think, okay, cool, done that, moving on to the next. So I find that a confronting question to be asked, but nonetheless a very good one. I think that on a small level, not to minimize it, but on a small level, I chaired a talk on Sunday at Cheltenham Literary Festival, which was with Laura Bates, Somasara, and Annabelle Soawimo. And it was about addressing the issues around our broken sex culture and how we fix them. And I had this moment of being on that stage. I'd always wanted to chair an event at Cheltenham Literary Festival, and it was on one of the main stages. And I felt not for the first time, I felt so certain in my questions. I felt really confident in my knowledge and my curiosity about the topic area. And I felt like I was the best person to do that job. And I think it was such an amazing moment, because I think you have those, something you're always looking to the next thing, always looking to be better at what you do. But I think there was something incredibly satisfying about feeling momentarily like, all my hard work and the stuff that I've been putting into building sex talks, I prepare so much for every interview I do so much research. And to be sitting there on that stage and thinking, I am the best person to be doing this, I really believe that. It was such a feeling of self-confidence that I think I haven't always had in my work, and a really incredible moment. So I think it's things like that that make me proudest of where I am, because I've always wanted that, but not necessarily, I wasn't sure that I would necessarily get to that place. So yeah.
Thank you, Emma. You've answered that so beautifully. And that's exactly why I asked the question, because I think all of us are running and we don't really reflect back often. And so I think it's really important that, but also how beautiful to be hearing about this moment where you felt like you were really arrived at that moment, where it felt like grounded. This is Emma Boynton, grounded. This is where I'm supposed to be. Emma, so give us some top tips for all our listeners.
Yeah.
And these are women of all ages, so 16 to 75 mainly. What top tips could you give to foster a little bit more the space of allowing ourselves to be in our bodies and to think about pleasure and what do we want?
Okay, so top tips, I would say, I think the first and foremost is you need to actually prioritize exploring your own pleasure. And I say this, I genuinely believe this is very important. I was badly bulimic and had an eating disorder for most of my adolescent life and into my adulthood. And it was doing sex therapy. My sex therapist told me I had to get used to experiencing pleasure in my day-to-day. Part of that was through masturbating, but part of that was also just through recognizing little moments of pleasure throughout my day, because I was in this cycle of quite a kind of punitive thing. I had a very punitive approach to my body. It was, over-exercise, undereat, And so she made me write a pleasure diary in which I'd note down 5 things every day that gave me pleasure. And it's a really great way of helping you reconnect with the things that bring you joy, that can feel like they're just the mundane things, like sipping coffee in the morning, having a gorgeous warm shower, but making you recognize those moments of pleasure and those moments of joy and not taking them for granted. And also it really helped me to build up this belief that I'm also worthy of joy, of pleasure, that pleasure is something that I should be giving myself. It's not something that I need to earn. It's not something I need to work for. And on top of that, setting aside time to masturbate and actually doing it. I think I definitely did not prioritize that prior to doing sex therapy. And I think it's a really great way of just getting in tune with your body, of seeing where you're at. I think it's such a great way of seeing how connected you are to your body, exploring what you like, what feels good and what doesn't, so that you can then communicate that to sexual partners. I think that's really important. So I think that's great. I think being able to, I'm a massive advocate for exercising and getting and moving every day. I think our lives are so online now, and I think that can make us feel like we just had to be hunched over our desk at all times. For me, the non-negotiable part of my day is I exercise pretty much every single day. And I think it's really important to have non-negotiables in your day that are key to you feeling good in yourself and in your body. And we are nothing without our bodies. We don't exist without our bodies. They are so fundamental, and we owe it to our bodies to nurture them, to nourish them, and to keep them healthy. So I think ring-fencing time for some movement of any sort is so key. And I think all of this, the sex and relationship sexuality is so much about being connected to your body. And so I think it's taking the time to feel that connection, whether it's through having massages, going to the gym, going on walks, masturbating, all these things that remind you of your embodied state and nature, I think are really important and definitely worth prioritizing, and not letting them just be this kind of optional as an aside that maybe you do sometimes. So those are probably very top tips. And then definitely when it comes to sex, communication. Communicate what you like, communicate what you don't. Ask your partners, like, never assume, even if you've been sleeping with someone for 25 years, don't assume that you know what they want in that day, in that time, in that moment. Always ask, and it's really sexy to be, what do you like? What does that feel good? Can we try this? And I think that's been the kind of most transformative thing, certainly for my sex life. So highly recommend communication.
I love it, Emma. Thank you so much for such brilliant tips. Emma, so what's in store for you? What's in store for Talks? Where are you heading? What's happening for you?
So I am going to be writing a book. I'm in the early stages. I probably shouldn't talk about it yet because I haven't written it and I haven't had it published yet, but whatever. I'm writing a book proposal now and working with an amazing literary agent to make that happen, and developing a podcast, which I'm really excited about, and really keen to be doing, hopefully just going to be doing some more, expanding the live events series, doing some bigger events. My dream is to have a Graham Norton style chat show that is all about busting taboos and addressing current affairs issues, because my background's in politics and current affairs, so I've never really let that side of myself go. But yeah, so hopefully Sex Talks will translate into some kind of live recorded show of some sort, which will be my dream. But yeah, in the immediate future, it's very much around the book and making sure that that is as good as it can be, and growing the podcast so I can continue to do some amazing interviews with people whose brains are 10 times bigger than mine.
Emma, you are amazing, and thank you so much for talking to us today.
Oh, my absolute pleasure. Well, thank you for spending the time talking to me. I feel really lucky to have been able to have this conversation.